The auctioneer's voice cut through the saloon like a knife through butter, and Delilah Owens stood on that makeshift stage with her hands bound, and her voice trapped somewhere deep in her throat, where no one could hear her screaming. She had been singing in that very same saloon just 3 nights before, earning honest coin with her voice, before Thomas Murphy decided her father's gambling debts made her property instead of a person. Now, it was August 1876 in Verde, Nevada, a dusty railroad town where the law turned a blind eye to men like Murphy who collected debts in human currency. The room reeked of whiskey and tobacco smoke, and Delilah kept her eyes fixed on a water stain on the ceiling rather than look at the faces of the men below. She was 21 years old, and her father had sold her future for $300 in poker debts he could not pay. Murphy had given her one choice: sing for him every night in his establishment, or he would auction her contract to whoever wanted to buy it. When she refused to be his caged songbird, he made good on his threat. "Gentlemen, this here is Delilah Owens, finest voice west of the Mississippi," Murphy announced, his tobacco-stained teeth showing in what he probably thought was a winning smile. Her father signed her over legal and proper, and whoever buys this contract gets themselves not just a pretty face but a voice that could make angels weep. Starting bid is $300. Delilah felt bile rise in her throat. The contract her father signed made her an indentured servant for 5 years, bound to work off his debt. Murphy had the document notarized by a corrupt clerk who did not care that her father had been drunk when he signed it, or that Delilah herself had never agreed to any of it. The bids came slow at first. A mine owner from Virginia City offered $350. A saloon keeper from Carson City went to $400. Delilah closed her eyes and tried to remember her mother's face, dead these past 8 years from cholera. Her mother would have fought tooth and nail to prevent this, but her father had crawled so deep into a bottle after the funeral that he barely remembered he had a daughter most days. $500. A new voice called from the back of the room, deep and steady and completely calm. Delilah opened her eyes and searched for the speaker. She found him standing near the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes so blue they were visible even across the crowded room. He wore dusty trail clothes and had the weathered look of a man who spent his days under the Nevada sun. Something in his expression was different from the other men, less hungry, more contemplative. $550, the mine owner countered. $600, the stranger said without hesitation. Murphy's eyes gleamed with greed. This was twice what he had paid for the debt, and the bidding showed no signs of stopping. Delilah felt her heart hammering against her ribs. It did not matter who bought her contract. She would still be property, still be owned. But something about the stranger's face made her wonder if perhaps one cage might have more room than another. $600 going once, Murphy announced when no other bids came. The mine owner looked angry but unwilling to go higher. Going twice. Sold to the gentleman in the back for $600. The stranger moved forward through the crowd, and Delilah could see him more clearly now. He was maybe 28 or 30, with strong features and calloused hands that pulled a leather wallet from his jacket. He counted out the bills onto Murphy's table with the practiced ease of someone used to large transactions. Murphy produced the contract document, and the stranger read it carefully, his jaw tightening as he went through the terms. "This says she has to work off $300 in debt, but I am paying $600, the stranger said. Murphy shrugged. "That is the price of the contract itself, friend. You own the debt and the terms of service." "So I own the debt," the stranger repeated slowly. He looked up at Delilah for the first time, meeting her eyes directly. His gaze was not leering or possessive. It was almost sad. and I can set whatever terms I want for how that debt is repaid. Long as she works for you for 5 years according to that paper," Murphy confirmed. The stranger nodded and signed his name at the bottom of the document where Murphy indicated. Then he folded the contract, put it in his inside jacket pocket, and climbed the steps to the stage. Delilah forced herself not to step back, to hold her ground even though every instinct screamed at her to run. He reached out slowly, giving her time to see what he was doing, and untied the ropes around her wrists. "My name is Nathan Navarro," he said quietly, for her ears only. "I own a cattle ranch about 10 miles west of here. I just bought this contract, which means I own your debt and your time for the next 5 years. But I do not own you, Miss Owens. No man can own another person, no matter what some piece of paper says. Do you understand?" Delilah rubbed her wrists where the rope had chafed the skin. She did not understand at all. She stared at him, searching his face for the trick, for the trap she knew had to be hiding somewhere in those words. "I do not understand," she admitted. "You will," Nathan said. He held out his hand, not demanding, just offering. "I have a wagon outside. I would like you to come with me to my ranch. Once we are there, we can talk about what happens next. But I promise you this right now, Miss Owens. You will not be singing any songs of sorrow on my land. Whatever happens, I want you to know that much." She looked at his outstretched hand. She looked at Murphy's greedy face behind the bar. She looked at the crowd of men who had been willing to bid on her like she was a head of cattle. Then she looked back at Nathan Navarro and saw something in his eyes she had not seen in a long time. Basic human decency. She took his hand. The wagon ride to Nathan's ranch took nearly 2 hours through the desert scrubland that surrounded Verde. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if Delilah had been in any state of mind to appreciate them. Nathan sat beside her on the wagon bench, handling the reins of 2 sturdy draft horses with easy competence. He did not try to make conversation, which Delilah appreciated. She was still trying to process what had just happened, still trying to understand what her life had become in the space of a single afternoon. "I know you must have questions," Nathan finally said as they crested a low hill and a sprawling ranch came into view below. "I will answer whatever you want to know. But first, let me show you where you will be staying and let you get cleaned up and fed. You look like you have not eaten today." He was right about that. Murphy had kept her locked in a storage room since morning with nothing but a cup of water. Her stomach was a tight knot of hunger and fear, though the fear was slowly giving way to exhausted confusion. The ranch was bigger than Delilah had expected. A large main house sat at the center, built of solid timber with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Beyond it were several outbuildings, a barn, a bunkhouse, a chicken coop, and what looked like a smokehouse. Fences stretched in every direction, enclosing pastures where cattle grazed in the fading light. It was clearly a prosperous operation, which made Delilah wonder again why Nathan had been willing to pay $600 for a contract he claimed not to want. A man emerged from the barn as Nathan pulled the wagon to a stop near the house. He was older, maybe 50, with graying hair and a weathered face that broke into a smile when he saw Nathan. "Boss, you are back. We were starting to worry." The older man's eyes moved to Delilah and his expression shifted to confusion. "Who is this?" "This is Miss Delilah Owens," Nathan said, climbing down from the wagon and then turning to offer Delilah his hand again. "She will be staying with us. Miss Owens, this is Frank Harrison, my ranch foreman. He has been working this land since before I bought it 5 years ago. Frank, could you take care of the horses? I need to get Miss Owens settled." Frank's confusion did not diminish, but he nodded and took the reins. "Sure thing, boss. Welcome, Miss Owens." "Thank you," Delilah managed, though her voice came out smaller than she intended. Nathan led her up the porch steps and into the house. The interior was neat and masculine, with simple furniture and few decorations. Everything was clean and well maintained. He guided her through a front room with a stone fireplace, past a dining area with a large wooden table, and down a hallway to a bedroom. "This was my sister's room," Nathan said, opening the door to reveal a space that was clearly more feminine than the rest of the house. The bed had a quilted coverlet, and there were curtains on the window. She got married last year and moved to Sacramento with her husband. The room has been empty since. You can stay here. Delilah stepped inside slowly, half expecting him to follow to make demands, to reveal the price she would really have to pay for this supposed kindness. But Nathan stayed in the doorway. "There is a wash basin on the dresser, and I will have someone bring you hot water. There are some of my sister's old clothes in the wardrobe. She is about your size. Take whatever you need. When you are ready, come back to the main room and we will have dinner. Then we will talk." He started to turn away, but Delilah found her voice. "Why did you buy me?" Nathan paused, his back to her. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something Delilah could not quite name. "Because someone had to, and I knew I would not hurt you. That is all I can promise right now, Miss Owens. I will not hurt you. Everything else we will figure out together." Then he left, closing the door gently behind him. Delilah stood in the middle of the room for a long moment, trying to remember how to breathe normally. Then, slowly, she moved to the wash basin and looked at herself in the small mirror above it. Her face was pale, her dark hair disheveled from being tied up all day. Her dress, the nice blue one she wore for singing, was wrinkled and dusty. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman whose life had fallen apart. A knock came at the door and a woman's voice called out, "Miss Owens." "I have your hot water." Delilah opened the door to find a Mexican woman in her 40s holding a large pitcher. The woman smiled warmly. "I am Rosa. I do the cooking and cleaning here. Mr. Nathan said you might need this." "Thank you," Delilah said, accepting the pitcher. Rosa's kindness, simple and unassuming, nearly undid her. She blinked hard against sudden tears. Rosa's expression softened. "Whatever trouble brought you here, you are safe now. Mr. Nathan is a good man. Best man I ever worked for. You rest, clean up, and come eat when you are ready. I made beef stew, and there is fresh bread." After Rosa left, Delilah poured the hot water into the basin and washed her face and hands. She stripped off her dress and used a cloth to wash as best she could, scrubbing away the smoke and fear of the saloon. Then she opened the wardrobe and found several simple dresses, all well-made but practical. She chose a brown cotton dress with small buttons up the front. It fit reasonably well, if a little loose in the shoulders. By the time she made her way back to the main room, full darkness had fallen outside. Nathan sat at the dining table with papers spread before him, but he stood when she entered. The table had been set for two, with bowls of stew and plates of bread already in place. The food smelled incredible. "Please sit," Nathan said, gesturing to one of the chairs. "You must be starving." Delilah sat, and for several minutes they ate in silence. The stew was rich and hearty, full of tender beef and vegetables. The bread was warm and crusty. Delilah had not realized how hungry she was until she started eating, and she had to force herself to slow down, to not make herself sick. Nathan ate more slowly, watching her with that same thoughtful expression. When she finally set down her spoon, some of her desperate hunger satisfied, he pushed the papers aside and folded his hands on the table. "Now we talk," he said. "I want to tell you a story, Miss Owens, about why I was in Verdi today and why I bought your contract." Delilah waited, her hands wrapped around a cup of water. I had a younger sister named Maria, Nathan began, and Delilah noticed the past tense. She was 16 when a man named Edward Collins decided he wanted her. Collins was a big rancher in these parts, had money and influence. He courted Maria, but she was not interested. She was young and wanted to see more of the world before settling down. Collins did not take rejection well. One night he cornered her in town and tried to force her into his carriage. She fought him off and ran home. I wanted to go after him, make him answer for what he tried to do, but Maria begged me not to. She said it would only make things worse. Nathan's jaw tightened, his eyes distant with memory. Collins started spreading rumors about Maria, saying she was loose, that she had led him on. In a small town, those kinds of rumors can destroy a woman. Maria became afraid to leave the house. Then Collins went to the territorial judge and produced a document. He said Maria's father, our father, had promised her to him in marriage before he died. The document was a forgery, obviously, but Collins had money and we had none. The judge said the engagement was legal and binding. Delilah felt cold dread settling in her stomach. This story was too familiar. I fought it every way I knew how, Nathan continued. I hired a lawyer with money I did not have. I tried to find proof the document was false. But Collins had too much power, too many friends in the right places. The wedding was set for October. Maria was trapped and I could not save her. He stopped, taking a slow breath. 2 weeks before the wedding, Maria borrowed a horse and rode out into the desert. They found her 3 days later at the bottom of a ravine. The sheriff said it was an accident, that her horse must have spooked. But I knew she chose to die rather than be forced into that marriage. Delilah pressed her hand over her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. That was 2 years ago, Nathan said, his voice rough with old grief. I swore then that if I ever had the power to stop something like that from happening to another woman, I would. So when I heard in town this morning that Thomas Murphy was auctioning off a contract for a woman, I went to see what was happening. When I saw you standing on that stage, looking like Maria looked when she was trapped and scared, I knew I had to buy that contract. Not to own you, Miss Owens. To free you. But the contract says 5 years, Delilah whispered. Nathan reached into his jacket and pulled out the folded document. He laid it on the table between them and produced a match. Watch, he said, and struck the match against the table. He held the flame to the corner of the contract, and they both watched as the paper caught fire, curling and blackening. Nathan held it until the flames got close to his fingers, then dropped it into an empty bowl where it finished burning to ash. There, Nathan said quietly. You are free. The debt is paid in full. You owe nothing to anyone. Delilah stared at the ashes, her mind struggling to accept what she had just witnessed. But you paid $600. I have money, Miss Owens. I built this ranch from nothing and it turns a good profit. $600 is not a small sum, but it is not worth more than a human life. It is not worth more than your freedom. I do not understand, Delilah said, and she hated how her voice shook. What do you want from me? Nathan met her eyes steadily. Nothing you do not want to give. Here are the facts, plain and simple. You are free to leave right now if you want. I will give you money for a stagecoach ticket to anywhere you want to go and enough to live on while you get settled. Or you can stay here. I can use help around the ranch. Rosa is getting older, and she has been asking for an assistant with the household work. I could also use someone to handle the ranch accounts because my bookkeeping is terrible. If you stay and work, I will pay you fair wages, same as I pay any of my ranch hands. You will have your own room, your meals, and your freedom. You can leave any time you want. That is the only offer I am making. What you decide is entirely up to you. Delilah's thoughts spun. Freedom. He was offering her actual freedom with no strings attached. It seemed impossible, too good to be true. Men like Nathan Navarro did not exist in the world she knew. And yet here he was, sitting across from her, having just burned $600 and asking for nothing in return except maybe some housework and bookkeeping. "I do not have anywhere to go," she admitted quietly. "My father is in Verdi, but I cannot go back there. He would just sell me again for his next bottle of whiskey. My mother is dead. I have no other family." "Then stay," Nathan said simply. "Stay as long as you need to. You said you were singing at Murphy's Saloon before this happened. Do you like to sing?" It was such an unexpected question that Delilah almost laughed. "Yes, I loved it. It was the only time I felt like myself, like I was more than just my father's disappointing daughter." "Then you should keep singing. Not for Murphy, not for anyone who wants to cage you, but for yourself, for joy." Nathan's expression softened. "That is what I meant earlier. I do not want to hear songs of sorrow on my land, Miss Owens. Life is hard enough without adding to the sadness. If you stay, if you work here, I hope you will sing sometimes. For yourself and for joy. That is all." Something in Delilah's chest loosened, a knot she had been carrying for so long she had forgotten it was there. She looked at this man who had saved her for no reason except that he could, who asked nothing except that she choose her own path, and she made her decision. "I will stay," she said, "at least for a while, until I figure out what comes next." Nathan smiled, and it transformed his face from handsome to something almost beautiful. "Good. I am glad. Now you should get some rest. It has been a terrible day, and tomorrow will be better. I promise." That night, lying in the bed that had belonged to Nathan's sister, Delilah stared at the ceiling and tried to believe that this was real. She was free. She was safe. A stranger had saved her and asked nothing in return. It seemed like something from a story, not something that could happen in the harsh reality of the Nevada desert. But the bed was soft, and the house was quiet. And for the first time in years, Delilah felt something that might have been hope. The next weeks passed in a blur of new routines and careful discoveries. Delilah threw herself into work around the ranch, partly because she wanted to feel useful and partly because staying busy kept her from thinking too hard about the life she had escaped. Rosa taught her how to cook for a household of ranch hands, how to preserve food for the winter, how to manage the endless tasks of keeping a working ranch running smoothly. Delilah learned that Nathan employed 6 permanent ranch hands plus Frank, the foreman, and that during busy seasons like calving or roundup, that number could double with temporary workers. Nathan had not been exaggerating about his bookkeeping skills. When Delilah offered to look at the ranch accounts, she found a chaotic mess of receipts, invoices, and hastily scribbled notes. It took her 3 full days just to organize everything, and another week to reconstruct the accounts into something resembling order. Nathan was sheepish about it, but also grateful. "My father was terrible with numbers too," he admitted, watching her work at the dining table that had become her makeshift office. "He was a dreamer, always sure the next venture would make us rich. It never did. He died when I was 18, leaving my mother and Maria and me with nothing but debts. It took me 5 years of working every job I could find to save enough to buy this ranch. Another 5 years to make it profitable. I am good with cattle and horses, Miss Owens. But ledgers might as well be written in Chinese for all the sense they make to me. You can call me Delilah," she said, looking up from a column of figures. "If we are going to be working together, we should use first names." Nathan hesitated, then nodded. "Delilah, and you should call me Nathan. Though around the ranch hands, it is probably better if you call me Mr. Navarro. Some of them are good men, but some are rough types who might get the wrong idea if things seem too familiar." Delilah understood. A single woman living on a ranch with unmarried men could invite gossip and worse. She appreciated Nathan's care in protecting her reputation, even though that reputation had already been dragged through the mud by Murphy's auction. As September arrived and the worst heat of summer began to break, Delilah found herself settling into ranch life in ways she had not expected. She learned the rhythms of cattle ranching, the early mornings and the long days, the way the work changed with the seasons. She learned the names of the ranch hands. Young Billy Cooper, who was only 19 and still learning, grizzled Tom Fletcher, who had been a cowboy for 30 years, quiet Miguel Santos, who could rope a steer faster than anyone Delilah had ever seen. They were wary of her at first, uncertain how to treat a woman who was neither family nor exactly a servant. But Delilah's willingness to work and her cheerful demeanor won most of them over. And slowly, carefully, Delilah learned about Nathan Navarro. He was a man of quiet routines and deep principles. He woke before dawn every day and spent an hour working with his horses before breakfast. He treated his employees fairly and paid them promptly. He had a quick mind for problem solving and a patient temperament that served him well in the unpredictable business of ranching. He read books in the evening, everything from Shakespeare to agricultural manuals. He attended church in Verdi every other Sunday, and on the Sundays he did not go to town. He read from his mother's old Bible on the porch. He was also kind in ways Delilah was not used to seeing in men. When Rosa's arthritis flared up, Nathan insisted she rest and hired a woman from town to help with the heavy work until Rosa felt better. When Billy Cooper's horse went lame during roundup, Nathan gave the young man one of his own horses to ride rather than making him walk the 10 miles back to the ranch. When a drought threatened the water supply, Nathan rode out to neighboring ranches to coordinate a plan for sharing creek access rather than fighting over it like some ranchers did. And he was true to his word about Delilah's freedom. He never told her what to do, only asked if she would be willing to help with various tasks. He never entered her room without knocking and being invited. He never touched her except for the occasional accidental brush of hands when passing dishes at dinner. He kept a respectful distance that made Delilah feel safe, but also, increasingly, made her curious. She started singing again in late September. It began one evening when she was kneading bread dough and humming without realizing it. The tune was an old hymn her mother used to sing, something about grace and redemption. Rosa heard her and smiled. "You have a beautiful voice," Rosa said. "Mr. Nathan said you were a singer." "I used to be," Delilah replied, "before everything happened." "You should sing for us at dinner sometime," Rosa suggested. "The men would like it. It gets lonely out here." That Sunday, when the ranch hands gathered for the weekly dinner that Rosa and Delilah prepared, Delilah stood up after the meal and sang. She chose a cheerful folk song about a girl who outwitted a fox trying to steal her chickens. Her voice was rusty from disuse, and she was nervous at first, but as the song went on, she remembered why she loved singing. The way the notes felt in her throat, the way the music could transform the air, the way people's faces changed when they listened. The ranch hands applauded when she finished, and Billy Cooper shouted, "More!" Delilah sang 3 more songs that evening. She looked at Nathan once during the 3rd song, a ballad about the beauty of the desert at sunset, and found him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. It was not lustful or possessive. It was almost reverent, like he was watching something sacred. After that, she sang every Sunday dinner. She sang while she worked in the kitchen. She sang while she hung laundry on the line or weeded Rosa's vegetable garden. She sang songs of joy, just like Nathan had asked, and slowly The part of her that Murphy and her father had tried to steal back started to return. October brought cooler weather and the start of preparations for winter. The cattle were moved to lower pastures. Firewood was cut and stacked. The barn was reinforced against potential snow. Delilah helped Rosa with canning and preserving, filling the cellar with jars of vegetables and fruit that would feed everyone through the cold months. It was during this time that Delilah realized she was falling in love with Nathan Navarro. It happened gradually, like the changing of seasons. It was in the way he smiled when he heard her singing, the way he always asked how her day was at dinner and actually listened to the answer, the way he rode out to check on the cattle in driving rain because he did not want to ask his men to do anything he would not do himself, the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she was not watching, with a mixture of tenderness and restraint that made her heart ache. Delilah tried to tell herself it was just gratitude. He had saved her, so of course she felt something for him. But gratitude did not explain the way her pulse quickened when he walked into a room. It did not explain the way she found excuses to be near him, to bring him coffee while he worked, to ask his opinion on the accounts. It did not explain the way she imagined what it would feel like if he touched her, really touched her, with intention and desire. She kept these feelings locked tight inside. Nathan had given her freedom, and she would not repay him by making things awkward or complicated. He had saved her out of principle, not because he wanted her affection. The last thing she wanted was to make him regret his kindness. But then came the October evening that changed everything. Delilah had been living at the ranch for 2 months. She was in the kitchen after dinner, washing dishes while Rosa packed up leftover food to take home to her husband who worked in town. Nathan came in with an armload of firewood, which he stacked near the stove. "Getting cold at night now," he said. "We will need to make sure this room stays warm or the pump will freeze." "I will remember to keep the fire banked," Delilah promised. Rosa said her good nights and left, and then it was just Delilah and Nathan in the kitchen. This was not unusual. They often ended up alone together in the evening, her working on accounts or mending clothes while he read. But tonight felt different somehow, charged with an energy Delilah could not name. "Delilah," Nathan said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" She turned from the dishes, drying her hands on her apron. "Of course." He seemed to be struggling with his words, which was unlike him. Nathan was usually so calm and confident. "These past 2 months, have you been happy here? I mean, are you staying because you want to or because you feel like you owe me something?" "I want to be here," Delilah said honestly. "This is the first place I have felt safe since my mother died. You have given me a life when I thought mine was over." "Why are you asking?" Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of uncertainty. "Because I need to know if you would tell me if you wanted to leave. I need to know that you are here by choice, completely by choice, with no coercion or obligation influencing your decision." "I would tell you," Delilah said. "I promise. But Nathan, I do not want to leave. I like it here. I like the work. I like Rosa and the ranch hands. I like having a purpose. And I like you." The last 3 words slipped out before she could stop them. She felt her face heat with embarrassment, but Nathan's expression shifted, his eyes widening slightly. "You like me," he repeated quietly. Delilah could have downplayed it, could have laughed it off as simple friendship. But she was tired of being afraid, tired of hiding. "Yes," she said, "I like you very much, more than I probably should considering everything. I know you saved me out of principle, not because you wanted anything from me, and I do not want to make you uncomfortable. But you asked for honesty, so there it is. I like you, Nathan Navarro. I think you are the best man I have ever known." For a long moment, Nathan just stared at her. Then he crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides and stopped just in front of her, close enough that Delilah could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice low and rough. "The reason I bought your contract was not entirely noble. Yes, I wanted to save you from that situation. Yes, I thought of Maria and knew I had to act. But Delilah, I saw you on that stage and you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Not just physically, though you are certainly that. But there was something in your eyes, something fierce and unbroken despite everything being done to you. I bought that contract because I could not stand the thought of anyone else owning you, but also because some part of me wanted you here near me." Delilah's breath caught in her throat. "These past 2 months have been torture," Nathan continued. "Having you in my house, hearing your voice every day, watching you laugh with Rosa and transform this ranch into a home. I have been in love with you since the second week you were here, when I saw you sitting on the porch at sunrise with a cup of coffee, looking at the desert like it was the most beautiful thing you had ever seen. But I could not tell you. How could I? You were just starting to feel safe. You had been through something traumatic. The last thing you needed was the man who owned your contract telling you he wanted you. I burned that contract to free you, but also to free myself. Because I knew I could never act on my feelings as long as that paper existed." "Nathan," Delilah whispered. "You do not have to feel anything for me," Nathan said quickly. "What you said about liking me, that is enough. More than enough. But I needed you to know the truth. I needed you to understand that when I ask you to stay, it is not just because you are good help around the ranch. It is because I cannot imagine this place without you anymore. It is because I am in love with you, Delilah Owens, and I have been trying not to be because I did not want to trap you in a different kind of cage." Delilah reached up and touched his face, her palm against his rough cheek. Nathan's eyes closed at the contact, like he had been starving for her touch and was finally being fed. "You are not a cage," Delilah said softly. "You are the opposite of a cage. You are the first person who ever gave me the space to choose my own life. And I choose this. I choose you. I have been in love with you too, Nathan. I was just too afraid to say it because I thought you were too good to want someone like me, someone whose own father sold her like cattle." "You are not what was done to you," Nathan said fiercely, opening his eyes. "You are brave and strong and talented. You took a terrible situation and turned it into a new life. You transformed this house into a home. You made me remember what it feels like to look forward to tomorrow. You are extraordinary, Delilah." Then he kissed her, and Delilah felt like she was flying and falling at the same time. His lips were gentle but insistent, asking a question that her mouth answered with enthusiasm. She wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him closer, pouring 2 months of suppressed feeling into that kiss. Nathan's arms came around her waist, holding her like she was precious, like she was something he had been waiting his whole life to find. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "I want to court you properly. Rides in the evening, dinners in town, the whole thing. I want everyone to know that you are not an employee or a charity case. You are the woman I love, and if you will have me, I want to marry you someday." "Someday soon, I hope," Delilah said with a smile. Nathan laughed, the sound full of joy. "As soon as you are ready, tomorrow if you want." "Maybe not quite that soon," Delilah said. "But soon. I want to marry you, Nathan. I want to build a life with you. I want to help run this ranch and raise children here and grow old together. I want all of it." "Then you will have it," Nathan promised. "All of it. Everything I have is yours, Delilah. My ranch, my name, my heart. All of it has been yours from the moment I saw you." They kissed again, longer this time, and Delilah felt the last chains of her old life finally break away. She was free. She was loved. She was home. The courtship that followed was the happiest time of Delilah's life. Nathan took her riding in the evenings, showing her the boundaries of his ranch and the secret beautiful places he had found in his years of working the land. There was a small waterfall in a canyon 3 miles north, a hidden oasis where trees grew thick and birds sang. There was a high plateau that offered views of the entire valley, where they could see Verde in the distance and watch the sunset paint the desert in gold and red. They went to church together in Verde, and Nathan introduced Delilah as his intended. Some people whispered, remembering the auction and the scandal, but Nathan's reputation as an honest businessman bought them enough goodwill that the whispers did not turn into outright hostility. Besides, Delilah discovered that she did not care what the gossips thought anymore. She had Nathan's love and respect, and that was all that mattered. Thomas Murphy glared at them from across the street one Sunday, his face twisted with anger at seeing his former investment happy and free. Nathan pulled Delilah a little closer and stared Murphy down until the saloon owner looked away and spat in the dirt. "He cannot touch you," Nathan said quietly. "That contract is ash, and I will break any man who tries to hurt you." "I know," Delilah said, and she did. She felt safe in a way she never had before, protected not by walls or distance but by love and commitment. In November, Nathan formally proposed. He did it at the waterfall, getting down on one knee in the shallow pool with water soaking his boots and a simple gold ring in his hand. "This was my grandmother's ring," he said. "My mother gave it to me before she died and told me to give it to the woman I could not live without. Delilah Owens, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and my partner and the person I wake up next to every morning for the rest of my life?" "Yes," Delilah said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The ring fit perfectly, and when Nathan stood and kissed her, Delilah felt like she had stepped into a dream. But it was real. This was her life now, full of love and possibility. They married the first week of December in a small ceremony at the church in Verde. Rosa stood as Delilah's witness, and Frank stood for Nathan. Delilah wore a cream-colored dress that had belonged to Nathan's mother, altered to fit her smaller frame. Nathan wore his best suit and could not stop smiling. The preacher seemed pleased to be marrying two people who were so obviously in love. And when he pronounced them husband and wife, the handful of guests broke into applause. The ranch hands threw a celebration at the ranch that evening, with food and music and dancing. Delilah sang 3 songs, including one she had written herself about finding home in unexpected places. Nathan held her close while they danced, and whispered in her ear that he was the luckiest man alive. Their wedding night was tender and unhurried, full of gentle exploration and whispered declarations of love. Nathan treated Delilah like she was made of glass, careful and reverent, until she laughingly told him she would not break. Then he loved her with a passion that left them both breathless and satisfied, tangled in each other's arms as the fire in the bedroom hearth burned low. "I love you," Nathan said into her hair. "I will love you every day for the rest of my life." "I love you too," Delilah replied. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for seeing me as more than what was done to me." "You saved yourself," Nathan said. "You had the courage to take my hand and trust a stranger. That was all you, Delilah. I just gave you a place to land." "We saved each other," Delilah decided. "You were so lonely before I came. I could see it in your eyes that first night. You needed someone to share this life with as much as I needed a new life to live." Nathan could not argue with that. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and when Delilah woke to sunlight streaming through the window and Nathan's arms still around her, she smiled. This was real. This was hers. This was love. The winter months tested the ranch in ways Delilah had not experienced before. Snow came early and heavy, blanketing the valley in white and making it difficult to get to town. They had prepared well, with plenty of food and firewood stored, but there were still challenges. Cattle had to be fed when the pastures were covered in snow. Water troughs had to be broken free of ice every morning. The cold was bitter and unrelenting. But inside the ranch house, there was warmth. Delilah and Nathan settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. They worked together seamlessly, each anticipating the other's needs and offering support without being asked. Nathan helped with the accounts in the evenings, slowly learning the basics of bookkeeping under Delilah's patient instruction. Delilah learned to mend tack and harnesses, skills that Nathan taught her by the fire while snow piled up outside. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. Nathan told her about his childhood, about his father's failed ventures and his mother's quiet strength. He told her about Maria, sharing memories both happy and sad, and cried a little when Delilah held him and told him it was not his fault that Maria had felt trapped. Delilah told Nathan about her mother, about the songs they used to sing together, and the dreams her mother had for her daughter's future. She told him about her father's decline into drink and gambling, and how helpless she had felt watching it happen. "I used to think I could save him," Delilah admitted one night as they lay in bed. "I thought if I just sang well enough, earned enough money, he would see that he did not need whiskey to feel good. But addiction does not work that way. He made his choices, and I could not change them." "You should not have had to," Nathan said. "You were his daughter. It was his job to protect you, not the other way around." "I know that now," Delilah said. "I made peace with it, or as much peace as anyone can make with that kind of betrayal. He is still in Verdi, I think, still drinking away whatever money he can scrounge. I do not plan to see him again." "You do not have to," Nathan assured her. "But if you want to try to reconcile, I will support you." Delilah kissed him for his unfailing support and understanding. "I do not want to. He stopped being my father when he put his name on that contract. You are my family now. You and Rosa and Frank and the ranch hands. This is where I belong." Christmas came and went quietly, just the two of them and a small celebration with the people who lived on the ranch. Nathan gave Delilah a beautiful leather journal for writing songs, and she gave him a new saddle she had commissioned from the leather worker in town. They attended Christmas service at the church and sang hymns together, their voices blending in harmony that made several people turn to listen. January brought a hard freeze that killed 2 cattle and tested everyone's endurance. February was not much better, with blizzards that kept everyone inside for days at a time. But March finally brought thaw, and with it, new life. Delilah discovered she was pregnant in late March, and when she told Nathan, he picked her up and spun her around despite her laughing protests. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, like he could not quite believe it. "You are going to have my baby." "Our baby," Delilah corrected, but she was smiling so wide her face hurt. She had not known how much she wanted this until she felt the first flutter of possibility, the first sign of new life growing inside her. The pregnancy was mostly easy, especially once the morning sickness passed after the first 2 months. Delilah continued working around the ranch, though Nathan became increasingly protective as her belly grew. He did not want her lifting anything heavy or working too hard in the summer heat. Delilah found his protectiveness endearing, even when it bordered on excessive. "I am pregnant, not made of porcelain," she reminded him when he tried to forbid her from weeding the garden in July. "Women have been doing this for thousands of years." "Not my wife carrying my child," Nathan said stubbornly. "That is a first-time event, and I will be as protective as I want." Delilah laughed and kissed him and let him help with the weeding, even though she could have done it perfectly well herself. Compromise was part of marriage, after all. Their son was born in early November, a year and 2 months after they married. The labor was long and difficult, attended by a midwife from town and Rosa, who held Delilah's hand and coached her through each contraction. Nathan paced outside the bedroom, forbidden from entering by the midwife who said men had no business in birthing rooms. When the baby's first cry finally split the air, Nathan nearly broke down the door trying to get inside. The midwife handed him the squalling, red-faced baby wrapped in a clean blanket, and Nathan looked at his son with wonder written across his face. "He is perfect," Nathan breathed. "Delilah, he is absolutely perfect." "Let me see him," Delilah said weakly from the bed. She was exhausted and sore, but the moment Nathan placed the baby in her arms, all of that faded. This was her son, hers and Nathan's. A new life born from love and hope instead of despair and coercion. "What should we name him?" Nathan asked, sitting on the edge of the bed and putting his arm around Delilah. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but never quite settled on one. Now, looking at the baby's face, Delilah knew. "Thomas," she said, "but we will call him Tommy. After my mother's father, who I never met but who she said was a good man." "Tommy Navarro," Nathan said, testing the name. "I like it. Hello, Tommy. Welcome to the ranch, son. You are going to love it here." The baby's eyes were closed, but he seemed to settle at the sound of his father's voice, his crying tapering off to small, snuffling noises. Delilah looked at Nathan and saw tears on his face. "Why are you crying?" she asked gently. "Because I am happy," Nathan said simply. "Happier than I ever thought I could be. I have you, and now we have him, and this life we built together. It is more than I ever dreamed possible when I walked into that saloon last year. You gave me this, Delilah. You gave me a family again." "We gave each other this," Delilah said. "You saved me first, but I think maybe I saved you too. We saved each other and built something beautiful." Nathan kissed her forehead, careful not to disturb the baby. "Now sing only songs of joy with me," he said softly, echoing the promise he had made the day he brought her to the ranch. "For the rest of our lives, only joy." "Only joy," Delilah agreed, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The years that followed were not perfect because no life is perfect, but they were good. Tommy grew into a bright, curious toddler who loved the horses and followed his father around like a devoted shadow. Delilah had a daughter 2 years after Tommy, a girl they named Margaret after Nathan's mother but called Maggie. She had Delilah's dark hair and Nathan's blue eyes, and she was as fierce as she was beautiful. The ranch prospered under Nathan's management and Delilah's careful bookkeeping. They were able to buy more land, expand the herd, and hire more permanent staff. Frank retired when he turned 60, and Nathan made him a generous gift of money and a small house in town where Frank could live out his days in comfort. Rosa continued working into her 60s, training the younger women Nathan hired to help with the increased household needs. Delilah never stopped singing. She sang to her children, teaching them the songs her mother had taught her. She sang while she worked, filling the ranch with music. She sang on Sunday evenings for the ranch hands who came to expect and enjoy the weekly concerts. And she sang for Nathan, late at night when it was just the two of them. Love songs and ballads and silly ditties that made him laugh. 3 years after Maggie was born, Delilah had another son. They named him Marcus, and he was the perfect combination of his parents, with Nathan's patient temperament and Delilah's quick smile. The 3 children filled the house with noise and laughter, and the kind of chaos that comes with a growing family. On Tommy's 5th birthday, Nathan organized a party that half of Verdi attended. Children ran through the yard playing games while adults talked and ate Rosa's excellent food. Thomas Murphy had left town by then. run out after a scandal involving marked cards and an angry minor. So there was no shadow of the past to darken the celebration. Delilah stood on the porch watching the festivities, one hand resting on her rounded belly. She was pregnant again, though they had not told the children yet. Nathan came to stand beside her, slipping his arm around her waist. "Happy?" he asked. "Incredibly," Delilah said. "Sometimes I have to pinch myself to believe this is real, that I get to have this life." "It is real," Nathan assured her. "And it is going to keep getting better. We are going to grow old together, watch our children grow up, bounce grandchildren on our knees someday. We are going to have the life my sister never got to have. The life you almost did not get to have." "We earned this, Delilah." "We did," she agreed and leaned her head against his shoulder. Their fourth child was another daughter, born healthy and loud in the spring. They named her Josephine, called her Josie, and she became the baby of the family and everyone's favorite. Tommy was protective of his sisters, and Maggie was protective of her brothers, and Marcus was friendly with everyone. They were a unit, the Navarro children, and they grew up knowing they were loved beyond measure. As the children grew, Nathan taught them about ranching. Tommy took to it naturally, loving the work with cattle and horses. Marcus preferred the bookkeeping side, showing an aptitude for numbers that made Delilah proud. Maggie wanted to do everything her brothers did and proved herself just as capable in the saddle or with a rope. Josie was the artist of the family, always drawing pictures of the ranch and the animals and her siblings. Delilah taught them all to sing. Family music nights became a tradition, with everyone taking turns performing or singing together in harmony. Neighbors sometimes rode over on those nights, drawn by the sound of music floating across the desert air. The Navarro Ranch became known not just for its excellent cattle, but also for its hospitality and joy. When Tommy turned 18, Nathan gave him a section of the ranch to manage on his own. It was a test and a gift, a way for the young man to prove himself capable of taking over the family business someday. Tommy rose to the challenge, showing the same work ethic and integrity his father had modeled for him his entire life. Maggie announced at 16 that she wanted to be a teacher. Nathan and Delilah supported her dream, sending her to the teaching college in Carson City, despite some raised eyebrows about a ranch girl seeking higher education. Maggie excelled, and when she graduated 2 years later, she returned to Verde and opened a small school for the children of ranch families who lived too far from town to attend the existing school. Marcus took over the ranch accounting when he was 20, allowing Delilah to step back from that work and focus on other projects. She started a small lending library in Verde, collecting books and making them available to anyone who wanted to read. It was a modest project, but one that brought her satisfaction, knowing she was helping to educate and enrich her community. Josie grew up to be a talented artist, whose paintings of the Nevada landscape attracted attention from galleries in San Francisco and Sacramento. She sold enough paintings to support herself, and eventually opened a small studio in Verde, where she taught art to anyone interested in learning. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Delilah back to the waterfall where he had proposed. They were older now, with lines on their faces and gray in their hair, but the love between them was as strong as ever. They waded into the shallow pool like they had all those years ago, and Nathan took her hands. 20 years, he said. 20 years of waking up next to you. 20 years of hearing you sing. 20 years of building this life together. I would do it all again in a heartbeat, Delilah. You are still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, and I am still the luckiest man alive. We are both lucky, Delilah said. We found each other against all odds. We turned something terrible into something wonderful. We built a family and a legacy. Our children are good people because you showed them how to be good. I am so proud of everything we have accomplished together." "Here is to 20 more years," Nathan said. "And 20 after that, if we are blessed with the time." "To however many years we get," Delilah agreed. "As long as we have each other." They kissed in the waterfall, surrounded by the sound of running water and birdsong, and Delilah felt the same rush of love she had felt on their wedding night. Time had not diminished their passion or their affection. If anything, the shared experiences of building a life together had deepened it. The years continued to pass. Tommy married a sweet young woman named Sarah who fit seamlessly into the family. They gave Nathan and Delilah their first grandchild, a boy named after Nathan. Maggie married one of her fellow teachers, a man named Robert who shared her passion for education. Marcus married late in his 30s to a widow with 2 children of her own. Josie never married, preferring her independence and her art, and Nathan and Delilah supported her choice without question. The ranch continued to thrive under multiple generations of Navarro management. Tommy and Marcus worked alongside Nathan, and eventually Tommy's oldest son joined them as well. The original house Nathan had bought was expanded and renovated to accommodate family gatherings that now included dozens of people. On a warm summer evening in 1903, when Delilah was 58 and Nathan was 65, the entire family gathered for a celebration. It had been 37 years since that terrible day at Murphy's saloon. 37 years since Nathan paid $600 and changed both their lives forever. The occasion was Nathan's retirement from active ranch management, officially handing control over to Tommy and Marcus, while he and Delilah enjoyed their later years in peace. The children and grandchildren filled the house and yard. There was enough food to feed an army, thanks to the combined efforts of multiple family members. As the sun set and the air cooled, someone called for music. Delilah stood up, her voice not as strong as it had been in her youth but still clear and true, and sang the same folk song she had sung that first Sunday dinner all those years ago, the one about the girl who outwitted the fox. Nathan watched her with love shining in his eyes, just like he had every time she sang for the past 3.5 decades. When she finished, the family applauded and cheered. Then Nathan stood and took Delilah's hand. "My wife sang for joy that first time, and she has filled this house with joy every day since," Nathan said to the assembled family. "I want you all to know the story of how we met, the real story, so you understand what kind of woman your mother and grandmother is." He told them about the auction, about the contract, about burning it and offering Delilah her freedom. He told them about falling in love and building a life from the ashes of something terrible. Some of the older children had heard parts of the story before, but many of the younger ones had not. They listened with wide eyes and somber faces. "Your grandmother was sold like property," Nathan said quietly, "but she refused to let that define her. She took the chance I offered her and turned it into this." He gestured at the ranch, the house, the family. "She took pain and transformed it into joy. She taught me how to be a better man, how to be a father, how to build something lasting and good. Every good thing in my life started the day I walked into that saloon and saw her standing on that stage. And I want all of you to understand that love is not just a feeling. It is a choice. It is choosing every day to honor and respect and support the person you love. It is building something together that neither of you could build alone." Tommy raised his glass. "To Mama and Papa, who showed us all what love looks like." "To Mama and Papa," the family echoed, and the sound of their voices filled the evening air. Later, when the party wound down and the children headed home or to bed, Nathan and Delilah sat on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The same stars that had been there that first night when Delilah arrived at the ranch, scared and uncertain and hoping against hope that this stranger might be different from the other men in her life. You ever think about what would have happened if I had not been in Verde that day? Nathan asked quietly. Sometimes, Delilah admitted, but I do not dwell on it. You were there, you did save me, and we built this beautiful life together. That is what matters. I meant what I said earlier, Nathan told her. Every good thing in my life started with you. You healed something in me I did not even know was broken. When Maria died, I was so angry and so helpless. Saving you, seeing you thrive, watching you become the amazing woman you always had the potential to be, that gave me purpose again. You gave me back my faith in goodness. And you gave me back my life, Delilah said. You gave me freedom and love and family. You gave me everything. I cannot imagine what my life would have been without you. You would have found a way, Nathan said with certainty. You are too strong to have stayed broken. But I am grateful every day that I got to be part of your journey. They sat in comfortable silence, rocking gently in the swing. Delilah started humming, an old tune she had learned from her mother. Nathan joined in, his voice rough but warm, and together they made music in the gathering darkness. Only songs of joy, Nathan whispered. Only joy, Delilah agreed. The years continued to flow past like water in the desert streams, sometimes rushing, sometimes slow, but always moving forward. Nathan and Delilah settled into a gentler rhythm as they aged. They took morning walks together, slower now but still hand in hand. They read books on the porch and told stories to grandchildren who came to visit. They attended church when Nathan's health allowed and hosted family dinners that had become legendary in their size and warmth. When Nathan turned 70, he had a mild heart episode that scared everyone. The doctor said he needed to take things easy, avoid stress and strain. For a man who had worked physically his entire life, this was a difficult adjustment. But with Delilah's patient encouragement and the support of their children, Nathan learned to slow down, to enjoy the simple pleasures of watching sunsets and listening to his wife sing. Delilah herself remained remarkably healthy into her 60s. Her voice stayed strong, and she continued to sing at every family gathering. She wrote songs now too, poetry set to music, most of them about love and family and the beauty of the Nevada landscape she had come to love so deeply. Josie encouraged her to publish them, and eventually a small book of Delilah's songs was printed and sold in shops throughout Nevada. It was a modest success, but Delilah was proud of it, proud to have created something lasting. On a spring morning in 1908, Nathan woke to find sunlight streaming through the bedroom window and Delilah already awake beside him. She was watching him with a soft smile, and when their eyes met, she reached out to touch his face. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," Nathan replied. "What are you thinking about?" "About how much I love you," Delilah said simply. "About how grateful I am for every single day we have had together. About how I would not change a single thing, even the hard parts, because they brought us here." Nathan took her hand and kissed her palm. "I love you too. More than words can express. You are my whole world, Delilah Navarro." They lay there together, comfortable and content, listening to the sounds of the ranch waking up outside. It was a perfect moment, one of thousands they had shared over the decades, and neither of them knew it would be one of their last. Nathan died peacefully in his sleep 3 weeks later, with Delilah holding his hand. He was 72 years old and had lived a full, rich life. The family gathered for his funeral, and the church in Verde was packed with people whose lives he had touched. Tommy gave the eulogy, speaking about his father's integrity and kindness, his hard work and his devotion to family. Delilah sat in the front row, dry-eyed and dignified, holding Tommy's wife Sarah's hand. She did not cry until later, when she was alone in the bedroom she had shared with Nathan for 32 years. Then she let herself grieve, sobbing into his pillow that still smelled faintly of him. But even in her grief, Delilah did not regret. They had been blessed with decades together, with children and grandchildren, with love and partnership. Nathan had died knowing he was loved, surrounded by family, at peace with the life he had lived. There was no tragedy in that, only the natural conclusion of a well-lived life. The weeks and months after Nathan's death were difficult. Delilah felt his absence like a physical ache, a constant reminder that half of her was missing. But she was not alone. Her children rallied around her, making sure she was never isolated, always included. The grandchildren visited often, bringing noise and life into the house that had become too quiet. Delilah found solace in her music. She sang more than ever, not sad songs but the joyful ones Nathan had loved. She sang his favorite hymns and the folk songs they had harmonized together. She sang to keep his memory alive and to honor the promise they had made to each other all those years ago, only songs of joy. Tommy asked her if she wanted to move to town, to a smaller house that would be easier to manage, but Delilah refused. "This is my home," she told him. "This is where your father brought me when I had nothing. This is where we built our life together. I am not leaving." So she stayed, and the ranch continued to thrive around her. She remained involved in the family business, advising Tommy and Marcus, doting on her grandchildren, and eventually her great-grandchildren as the oldest of her grandchildren began having babies of their own. Delilah lived to be 79 years old, dying peacefully in her sleep in the same bed where Nathan had died 14 years earlier. It was 1922, and the world had changed dramatically from the rough frontier territory of her youth. But the Navarro ranch remained, a testament to the love and work of two people who had refused to let circumstances define their destiny. At her funeral, Josie shared a song that Delilah had written late in life. It was called "Only Joy," and it told the story of a woman who was bought and freed and loved, who turned tragedy into triumph, who built a legacy of music and family that would outlast her own life. The family sang it together, their voices blending in harmony the way Delilah and Nathan's had always done, and there was not a dry eye in the church. The ranch continued through the generations, passed down through Tommy's line, and then to his children and grandchildren. The original house was eventually replaced with a larger, more modern structure, but a small museum was built on the property to preserve the family history. In that museum were Nathan and Delilah's wedding photo, the leather journal Nathan had given Delilah for writing songs, the book of her published music, and a copy of the legal document that showed Nathan Navarro purchasing an indenture contract for $600 in August 1876. Next to that document was a brass plaque with an inscription. Nathan Navarro bought Delilah Owens' contract of indenture on August 15, 1876, and immediately destroyed it, offering her freedom with no conditions. They married 3 months later and built a life of love, joy, and family that spanned 32 years and produced 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and 27 great-grandchildren. Their story is a reminder that love can triumph over injustice, that kindness can change lives, and that the greatest legacy we can leave is the love we give and the family we build. Now, sing only songs of joy. Tourists who visited the museum read the plaque and studied the faded photographs. They marveled at the story, at the romance and the triumph. But for the Navarro family, it was more than just a story. It was their heritage, the foundation of everything they had become. They gathered at the ranch every year on the anniversary of Nathan and Delilah's wedding, and they sang together, continuing the tradition their ancestors had started. The world changed around them, but some things remained constant. The Nevada sun beating down on the desert, the cattle grazing in the pastures, the sound of music floating on the evening air. And at the heart of it all, even though Nathan and Delilah were long gone, their love story continued to inspire and shape the family they had created. Because that is what love does. It transforms. It endures. It creates ripples that spread far beyond the original moment, touching lives not yet born, shaping futures not yet imagined. Nathan Navarro paid $600 and gained a lifetime of joy. Delilah Owens was sold for a debt and found freedom in love. Together they built something that lasted far longer than their own lives, something that proved every single day that the best things in life are not bought or sold but chosen, nurtured, and shared. And somewhere in the wind that blew across the ranch, in the songs that the family still sang, in the love that continued to grow and spread through generations, Nathan and Delilah lived on. Not in flesh but in legacy, not in presence but in impact, not in words but in the joy that they had promised to share with each other and had instead shared with the world. Their story ended where all good stories should, with love triumphant, family thriving, and the promise that even in the darkest moments, hope and joy can be found. They sang only songs of joy together, just as Nathan had asked, and that joyful music echoed through time itself, a testament to what two people could build when they chose love over fear, freedom over bondage, and joy over sorrow. The end of their lives was not the end of their story, and that was perhaps the most beautiful thing of all. They lived on in every child who learned to sing, in every couple who chose kindness, in every person who looked at injustice and decided to act. They lived on in the ranch that bore their name and the family that carried their legacy. They lived on in the simple truth that love, real love, never dies. It just transforms, spreading and growing and touching new lives in new ways. Nathan and Delilah's love story was not about a rancher who saved a woman from being sold. It was about two people who saved each other, who built something beautiful from broken pieces, who chose joy even when sorrow would have been easier. It was about the power of kindness and the strength of commitment. It was about faith in goodness and the courage to choose love, and it was about keeping promises. The promise to sing only songs of joy, the promise to honor and cherish, the promise to build a life worth living. They kept those promises every day they were together, and continued keeping them even after death parted them, through the children they raised and the values they instilled and the love they left behind. In the end, that was their greatest triumph. Not that they survived hardship or built a successful ranch or raised 4 children. Their greatest triumph was that they loved each other well, completely and truly, and that love became the foundation for generations of joy. They proved that no matter how dark the beginning, a story could have a beautiful middle and a triumphant ending. They proved that being sold for a song could lead to a lifetime of singing, that being trapped could lead to freedom, that despair could transform into hope. They lived. They loved. They thrived. And their joy, chosen deliberately every single day, became the inheritance they left behind. Not land or money or possessions, but joy. The kind of joy that comes from loving and being loved, from building something lasting, from keeping promises and honoring commitments. The kind of joy that echoes through generations and reminds everyone who hears their story that love is always worth choosing, always worth fighting for, always worth celebrating. Nathan and Delilah would have been pleased to know their story continued to inspire long after they were gone. But more than that, they would have been pleased to know that the life they built together, the family they raised, and the love they shared continued to bring joy to the world. Because that was all they ever wanted, to sing songs of joy together, to build a life worth living, and to prove that even the darkest beginning could lead to the brightest future. And they did exactly that, leaving behind a legacy not of pain or struggle, but of triumph and love and endless, beautiful joy.